Good morning, one and all, and welcome back to Bible Break. And this morning, having finished the Gospel of Mark last time around, we're back in Genesis. So we're picking up where we left off, and we're starting today, in effect, the story of Joseph. So we're in Genesis chapter 37. And it's going to be a short reading today. We'll read from verse 1 to verse 11 of Genesis chapter 37. Okay, let's go. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made a richly ornamented robe for him. Coat of many colours. Who cares? I don't know why they have to. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of corn out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So this is the story of Joseph. And what are your first impressions of the man who God is going to use to save his people? Because to his family, all right, he's the apple of dad's eye, but eventually, even to dad, he comes across as being a bit of a jerk. But anyway, let's take this bit by bit to see why that is. We noticed that we started off with Jacob living in the land that his father had lived in, and the land that had been promised to his father after him. So to Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob, they are in the land, and Jacob is in the land of Canaan, the promised land. And we are told this is the account of Jacob that follows. In my French Bible, I read, this is the posterity of Jacob. Now, the posterity are your descendants. And usually when you read that in the Bible, you've got the genealogy that follows of the patriarch or the king or whoever it may be. But when we read this is the account of Jacob, we then read not a genealogy, but Joseph, and we stop right there. Because it's only through Joseph that Jacob's posterity, Jacob's descendants, is going to be preserved from harm, is going to be saved and delivered from it, and as I say, preserved, conserved for the future, saved, and effectively saved by Joseph. So it's no exaggeration to say, as I say, that the conclusion of the book of Genesis is the story of Joseph. And Joseph is everything, it's quite clear, to Jacob, his father. much to the chagrin of his brothers, who have no trouble sensing who their father's favourite is. If they had any doubts, that coat of many colours that he sometimes wore or often wore about the place was the visible sign of his father's affection and greater affection for Joseph. And we are told that the reason for this is because Jacob had Joseph in his old age. Not only so, that's what's mentioned, but not only so, you may recall that Jacob had Joseph and Benjamin, who was really the youngest of the brothers, and he had those two with Rachel, and Rachel died, if you remember, at Benjamin's birth. So Rachel was really the wife that Jacob had, that he loved. Though we hear of Joseph being in the field with his half brothers, if you like, with who are the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, but if you like, his father's other wives, because Jacob, it's clear from what we've read previously, is not, Jacob loved Rachel. And when you think of the patriarchs, the great patriarchs, the fathers of Israel and the nation, ultimately, at the end of the day, they were one woman men, as it were, in the sense that you don't think of Abram and his half a dozen wives, you think of Abram and Sarah. Isaac, interestingly, only took and only had Rebecca for wife. In that sense, he kind of prefigures Christian marriage. And then Jacob had several wives, as we're reading again here. But when we think of Jacob, we think of Jacob and Rachel. So, as I say, the favoritism there, it's not good. It's not good either, as I've probably said before, to show any favoritism within a family, because, really speaking, the golden rule, you could say, for your kids should be that you treat them all equally, and you show them the same affection and the same love. That may come naturally to many of us. It didn't come naturally to Jacob, who couldn't hide his preference for Joseph. So Jacob doesn't appear to be playing it too well inside the family, and like I say, he to add insult to injury, he gives Joseph this special present, this coat, and Joseph himself appears to have relished his privileged position and not to have done anything to curry favour with his brothers. In fact, we are told, are we not, that at least on one occasion his father confided to him this task. Maybe he had just confided it to him full stop, because Joseph was quite happy to play the role of school snitch. He'd be with his brothers in the field, but instead of being one of them and one with them, he's the one who would go running back to Dad and say, "Oh, Dad, I heard Bilhah or Zilpah say this or that. I heard my brothers say this amongst themselves. Oh, and this is what they said about me and to me." So he was that nasty little snitch that everybody's bound to hate. If you have a grass, as I say, in the classroom, or if you have he's not everybody's best friend, is he? That's probably why he is the snitch in the first place, or that's what might have contributed to it. So this isn't a very attractive trait in Joseph, to say the least. But that is what he is, effectively. He's a snitch on his brothers, and it gets to the point where they've had enough of it. But not before. Once again, Joseph himself adds insult to injury, because he's very frank, it seems. He will, instead of keeping things to himself, he'll go and snitch, and instead of keeping things to himself, he'll tell it. And he'll just say it. There's a certain naivety, one gets the impression, with him. And so when he has these dreams, which are from God, it isn't explicitly said so here, but it's clear that that's the case, because these dreams are really frame everything that is to follow, and will be fulfilled. They will be fulfilled, these dreams. What are the dreams? Well, the dream about the wheat and about the sun and the stars. The gist of both those dreams is that Joseph will rule over his family. Joseph's family will bow down before him and acknowledge him as their chief, as their head. Now, that's a bit much for Joseph's, let's be clear, for Joseph's elder brothers. You little pipsqueak are going to rule over us. You really think so, do you? Because they get the gist of the dream straight away, which Joseph has probably, as I say, recounted to them with some relish, boastfully perhaps. Certainly naively, he doesn't seem to bother what the effect will be on his brothers of what he says to them. And as I say, he tells it to his father as well. Now, to your brothers, to tell your brothers that they're going to bow down to you might be one thing, your elder brothers, but to tell mum and dad as well that they are going to bow down to you, that might be the straw to break their camel's back. And Jacob duly, we are told, reprimands him, tells him off, ticks him off. Turns out that that's not the issue, though. The issue isn't whether Joseph is being brash and brazen and precocious, or proud and arrogant and boastful. That's not really the issue at the end of the day. The issue at the end of the day, and this is something that we need to be clear of in our own day as in any generation, the issue is not how somebody's manner comes across, whether somebody comes across as being abrasive or even as being a creep. That's not the issue. The principal issue is, well, is he telling the truth, though? Is what he's saying to you true? And of course, Joseph's family don't know that it's going to come true. And more importantly, perhaps, they don't know the how or the why it's going to come true. Because that really is the important thing as far as they are and as far as they will be concerned. So there are, as I say, there are several lessons that we can draw from what we've just read. Really, as I say, first and foremost, be careful with your kids. Try to treat them equally. Secondly, if you're a Joseph, do you have to tell everybody everything and take such great pleasure in doing so? Or might it be better to keep certain things to yourself? But perhaps he couldn't. Perhaps even that is part of God's plan, because we are told that Jacob, Joseph's father, despite his reprimand, and like Mary, for that which concerned Jesus in the New Testament, we are told that she kept everything hid in her heart, or she kept everything in her heart. And Jacob does the same as far as Joseph is concerned. He doesn't forget. Even though he's not happy with what he's heard, he doesn't forget what Joseph has said to him. So the ultimate lesson isn't actually a moral one or a social one. The ultimate lesson, as we shall see, is that God's plan will be fulfilled. God's destiny for each one will be fulfilled. And there it is. So I shall leave you with that, and I'll see you next time around.